Hi, everyone. Welcome to E-Schoolhouse. This is Inspirations from the House, our weekly video series coming live to you from Austin, Texas. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Deborah, and I'm your host here at E-Schoolhouse. Now, today, we're going to talk about something that so many parents have asked me recently, and that is, how do I know that my child is on track? Now, I made a whole bunch of notes about this because I think this is really important. So bear with me if I glance down to look at my notes. I want to make sure that I hit it all for you. Okay, so how do you know if your child's learning is on track? Well, on track for what? You know, what does that mean, on track? Are we talking about grade level? Because as you know, grade levels really throughout the entire world are based on age, not based on learning. So on track for what? To start school? To go to the next grade level? You know, I want to show you a quick example of what these different levels might mean. Here we go. Okay, this is one child. Okay, and we're trying to find out if this child is on track. So if you look here on the red, this child's reading level is right about the second grade. Math is down here, a little bit above first grade. Social and emotional, between second and third grade. And look at problem solving, third grade. Now, I'm not going to tell you what grade this child is in, but what track is this child on? You know, what track would you choose? Is that child on track? Well, who defines what on track means? Who defines what ready means? Who defines the standard to which all children, your children, are compared? So how do you know if your child is on track? Well, the first thing I want to kind of touch on is the two different types of experiences that need to happen in order for learning to occur. The first type of experience is called experience expected. Our brains are designed by Mother Nature to expect certain experiences in the early years. You know, the visual input, the auditory input, the physical movement input that comes into our brains when we're very young helps our brains develop, and that is critical. Nature expects those things to happen. So really, there's not a whole lot that you as parents can do as long as you provide an environment where you are talking to your children, they're moving around, and they're having these types of experiences. So experience expectant learning happens naturally, and it is critical, but it happens naturally. The other type of learning is experience-dependent learning. And it's really just as it explains. In order to learn something, you need to experience it. And that's different in different cultures. You know, some children in some cultures around the world learn to hunt when they're really young. They had the experience, so they could learn it. A meaningful experience promotes learning. So if you provide meaningful experiences, the learning will occur. Okay, now I want to address this on track thing with a couple of examples. So let's talk about memorizing multiplication tables, because I'm sure we've all had to do that, right? What is on track for memorizing multiplication tables? At what age is your child on track for having his multiplication tables memorized? When should your child have his multiplication tables memorized? I'll give you a second. Do you know what the answer is? Never. Never. What's the point? Memorization is not learning. Memorization is not understanding. Memorization happens with repetition, and that's good. If you use it in a meaningful way, you're going to remember it. But just straight out memorizing for the sake of memorizing, I mean, okay, so when I was a kid, history was just not my thing, because the way it was taught was all these facts that you had to memorize. So I just remember flashcards and trying to memorize this information so I could go the next day and take a test. And as soon as the test was over, I remember thinking, I don't have to remember that anymore. Okay? Now, to people who are historians, the reason they are is because it's meaningful to them. They get meaning out of that information. That's how they're able to do it. Okay? So when information is used in a meaningful way, it can be learned. Rote memorization of facts, it's not learning. There was an experience that I had when my daughter, who is now an adult, when she was in the second grade, they were asked to memorize, I don't remember if it was addition, subtraction, or multiplication tables, but it was one of those. And so she's in the second grade and she was struggling to get these things memorized. And they would give them these timed tests. She had to finish it in like a certain amount of time. And I don't know about you, but that stresses me out just thinking about it. Okay. So she was struggling with it. So I sat down to help her and I showed her ways of using these beautiful things to do her math stuff. And she was getting it and she was getting good at it. Okay. So then the parent-teacher conference comes, and this is when I was still an engineer. I was not in the education world at this point. So I go to the parent-teacher conference, and her second grade teacher was very concerned, that she didn't have these math tables memorized. And I said, well, she could do it. I mean, she's using her fingers to do it. And the teacher said, if she has to do that her whole life, it's going to be a real handicap for her. And I said, I use my fingers. In fact, I taught her my method on how I do it. And, and the teacher said, well, has that been a problem for you? And I said, well, I've got an electrical engineering degree and I graduated with honors. So no, it hasn't been a problem. I didn't say it's snotty, okay? I remember the teacher and me laughing together. It was really kind of funny. But my point is this, memorization is not learning. Okay. There are children that we see who can, 3-year-olds who can recite all the capitals of all the countries in the world. Well, that's great. I mean, they're working on memorization. But do they know what that means? What does the capital of a country mean? Meaningful experiences bring learning. And while we're on the subject, I personally think flashcards are pointless, but that's my opinion. Okay. So I also want to explain this experience-dependent learning with another example. I have a friend who's got a 12-year-old daughter. Her name is Sophie. And Sophie's an average student. She's in the 6th grade. She gets pretty much average grades. She's a sweet girl, gets her work done. But Sophie has a passion for horses. This child loves everything about horses. She reads about them, draws them, watches documentaries. She is so into horses. And she goes to a riding stable a couple of times a week. And she's so in love with horses that she volunteers her time to be around the horses. She's cleaning out stalls, she's brushing them, and all this stuff. She's just really, really into horses. Well, one of her favorite horses, his name is Bo Peep. I thought that was really cute. Got a cough. And Sophie was super concerned. First of all, she didn't even realize that horses could get coughs. So she asked the veterinarian at the horse stable, what's going to happen? Is Bo Peep going to be okay? And the veterinarian said, sure, but it might be helpful for you to learn a little bit more about it. And so Sophie goes home with a big, thick college book about horses, a veterinary science book that is written to people who are learning to become veterinarians, doctorate level. Now keep in mind, Sophie is in the 6th grade and she reads on a 6th grade level. She's an average reader. So she comes home with this book because she's so motivated to learn about the horses. She digs into the book and it is over her head, okay? Now, if you were her parent, what would you do? Would you say, oh, Sophie, that's way too hard for you? Well, of course you wouldn't. What parent would? You just encourage her. Sophie, it is amazing that you are so motivated to learn about horses. Let me know if I can help you. You do everything you can to help your children. So Sophie plows through this book and she is figuring it out. She asks questions of you. She asks questions of the veterinarian, and she is learning more and more about horses because she wants to. She's learning more about horses, though. What she's learning is how to learn. That's critical. And she's doing this with the love and support of her parents. And she's doing this because she really, really wants to. And that is real learning. It's not really about horses. You know, through all of that, Sophie gained so much confidence. She stretched her brain. It grew. She grew new neural pathways. And her parents facilitated that by supporting her need and her desire to learn at that level. She is learning how to learn. Now I ask you, is there a track for that? There's so much pressure on parents right now. You know, there's something called the cult of achievement, which I'll probably talk about at some other point in time. But when you see other people's children achieving these great things and they're bragging about it and all of that, it can make you really anxious and really nervous and make you wonder, is my child on track? You are the expert on your child. I'm very passionate about that. Comparing your child to somebody else is pointless. Think about Sophie. Is Sophie average? I don't think so. I mean, a child with that much motivation to take on something that difficult because she wanted to learn so badly, I don't find anything average about that. Every child is unique, beautifully unique. And the ones living with you in your household, you're experts on them. So on track for what? I want to encourage each and every one of you to trust yourself, trust your instincts, and give yourselves a break. If you're creating this nurturing environment for your children, you're on track. If you want to know more about this whole on-track thing, because really I am just touching the surface of it, please message me. I would love to talk to you some more about this. But the bottom line is this. How do you know if your child is on track? If you can inspire your child to learn how to learn, he or she can learn anything, no matter what track they're on. I sure hope that was helpful. I sure hope you got something from that. And I look forward to seeing you next week on Inspirations from the House. Have a good day.